But yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to use all this community stuff that we've heard about over the last couple of keynotes and turn it into a way that you can advance your career. Because unfortunately, it is no longer enough just to be a great developer. You're expected to speak at conferences, blog, commit to open source, engage with the community, and the list goes on. And you're probably wondering why. Why is my technical ability not enough? Well, the short answer is a lot of the time, people making decisions about your career actually never see your code. Funny enough, you don't even have to be a good developer if the right people know your name. Now, I'm not saying write bad code, but if you start to enhance your personal profile, you can definitely grow your career. So I'm Sam Hepburn. As I said, I work for Sneak. I help grow all their communities. I've only got 20 minutes, so I'm not going to go into a lot about who I am. But if you want to chat, my favorite thing to do is I run a Discord server called DevSecOps community. We talk a lot about security, and security's come up a lot. So join me there and we can chat a bit. But otherwise, I am still on Twitter for now. We'll see what happens, as well as LinkedIn if you want to know more. But before I get started, I just want a little disclaimer. I'm going to talk a lot about a lot of different ways in which you can get involved in community. You don't need to do it all. Pick one or two things that work for you, that resonate for you, and do that. Please do not do it all. So in 20 minutes, I'm actually going to cover public speaking, because we're at a conference and we'd love you to submit talks, how to do a call for papers. We're going to talk a bit about blogging and community engagement. I'm going to touch very briefly on open source, because we've heard a lot about it today. And then actually how to use community to find that next role, that next cool project. So let's get started. So if we talk about public speaking, if the idea of standing in front of a huge audience literally gives you a panic attack, you don't have to do it. But if it's the fear of what will I even speak about, there's experts out there that know more than me, then this is something we can actually work with. So what to speak about? Well, all of you face challenging problems all the time. You can't find the solution, you go onto the interweb, you look on Stack Overflow, GitHub, the forum, the YouTube video from the conference we had today, and eventually you solve the problem. And then you think, if only I knew what I know now. Well, there's probably at least another human, probably a lot more, that are wondering the same question. So there's your talk. A lot of you have great conference talks in you, you don't even realize it. Other things you could talk about are, do you have a great team dynamic? I really actually enjoy problems I couldn't solve, because if you spend a week, a month, a year trying to solve a problem, and you do a talk about the 5 things you tried, you may have saved someone else a week, a month, or a year of making those problems. Or maybe you inspire them to do a talk about how they solve those problems. So it's also okay to share something that doesn't have a solution as well. What's a part of your experiences are interesting and unique that you can share with other people? If it's the fear of, I'm not an expert, others know more than me, well, you're probably right. But if I use the analogy of a startup, if I go to a talk and someone talks about how they made their first billion, and I'm an early stage founder, I actually probably don't care. I just want to know how to survive my first year without going bankrupt. And that's the same for you. We're all on different parts of our journey, and we're always looking at the human ahead of us, like, oh, I want to know what they know. I want to learn from them. But if we turn around, there's a whole bunch of people who are following in our footsteps that want to know what you've done, what you've accomplished, and what you can share with them. So remember, there are people following you that want to know what you've done. The other thing I just want to say is, if you do go through all the effort of making a conference talk and submitting it, feel free to use that conference talk at multiple conferences, multiple meetups. I'd love to say that everyone in this room are the only people that need to hear about how to use community, but you're not. And so you can utilize that content and share it with a lot of audiences. But the number one thing I want you to do is always be improving. So you want to ask for feedback. Amanda asked for feedback today. But a lot of the time when we ask for feedback, we get the generic, oh, it was great, you did that well, thank you so much, and it moves on. Because we love positive feedback. We love hearing how well we did, and we love giving people that feedback. So actually invite someone to your session with the intention of giving feedback. Gives them the space to listen and give you feedback, whether it's based on how you present and how you stand on stage, all the way down to the content itself. So when I first started giving talks, I'm a non-technical human, and the first talk I ever did was at a Java conference, because I'm an idiot. And the whole time I was fidgeting with my clothing, and I got that feedback. So I went out and I found out, how am I going to overcome this, because I enjoy speaking at conferences. So someone said, hold something in your hand. So now I hold a clicker. Before there was clickers, it was a water bottle, it was something. And so I moved that between my hands, and now I'm just a loud South African that does this, and that helped me with my fidgeting. Now I ask for feedback on other things. Also think about who you're inviting into the room. So it might be nice to invite your CTO or your head of engineering, But if you're giving a talk to junior developers, that person hasn't been a junior developer in 5, 10, 15 years. So invite a junior developer along to give you that feedback. They'll tell you if it's too high level, too low level, it was too easy, you forgot to say this. So also think about who you're asking to give you feedback. Cool. You might also say to me, Sam, great, I'm ready to share my knowledge, but I'm not ready to stand on a stage. That is fine too. Share your knowledge with your colleagues. Book a meeting room. Share something that you've done, a project that you've solved. Sometimes your company might even pay for the lunch, but bring your lunch in. Or I know we're all Zoom fatigued, but you can hop on a call and share it with each other. You can then get feedback and potentially go to a meetup community and then hopefully submit it to a conference. So there are stages. You don't need to go from I've never spoken to a massive stage. You can kind of flex that muscle, get that feedback along the way. So that's completely fine. So I've used the word CFP a lot, and I'm going to make an assumption that there's at least one person in the room that doesn't know what that means, and all that is a call for papers. Now, the beautiful thing about the world we live in technology is that conferences aren't only invite only. And the reason why is because we can't actually keep up to date with all the amazing things happening in technology all the time. So we want you to submit to the conferences that we run so that we can hear and see what you're doing. So please, people want you to submit, don't be daunted by it, but a few things to think about when you are submitting is, if you're like me, I'm dyslexic, I hate writing things, it's very scary, but there's a few things. So never underestimate the power of a good title. Now, a title will not get you accepted purely based on the title, but it will catch the CFP committee's attention to hopefully then look into your abstract, because we get a lot of submissions. Other things to think about are, is the intention in your title? Please make it short and sweet, 50 to 80 characters max. You can use humor, that's fine, but please, the right humor. And numbers go down well. So like 5 tips in 5 minutes to securing, I don't know, Docker clusters or whatever, Kubernetes clusters is great. So you can use those types of things. But if you are using humor, please do not make it offensive. And 90% of people don't mean to do this. There's a funny pun, there's a play on words, there's a joke. Check with other people if it's actually funny, and don't make it an echo chamber. If I ask everyone that looks and acts and sounds like me if my joke is funny, they're going to say yes. So maybe ask a few different types of people if your joke is funny. I know you don't mean to do it, but offensive things are not good. So a few things to think about. The next thing we're going to talk about is abstracts. Now, abstracts are fun, but a lot of people love writing essays. So keep it short and sweet and to the point. Also make clear takeaways. I see this, so I run DevSecCon, it's a vendor neutral community, and one of the number one bits of feedback we get from our CFP committee was, it sounds like a cool talk, but I'm not too sure what the audience is going to get out of it. And so it gets ranked lower, and then when we accept talks, we accept others. So make it, what's in it for the audience? What are they going to learn? Even if it's just going to learn 5 things of what not to do and trying to do X, Y, and Z, that's fine. But what is in it for them? And you can use bullet points. And again, on the long rambling things, if I can read your abstract and don't need to come to your talk because you've written a whole essay, there's no point in that. So your 3 top tips are completely fine. You want content there, but not too much. Make the, CFP want to come to your talk as well because it's really interesting. And again, you've got colleagues, you've got team members, you've got community members sitting next to you right now that will run over your abstracts, look at your titles, and even say if they would come. So talk to each other. It's okay to ask for help. But please do not submit a product pitch. Now, we all work for companies. I'm wearing a giant dog on my t-shirt, we all work for companies. We saw Rory, he said it's not a Datadog talk. It's okay to use your environment. Sometimes your company will pay for you to travel to conferences and things, but give knowledge, teach someone something. He took that data and he showed you something in the talk earlier. He didn't stand there and give you a product pitch about his company. So it's okay to talk about the place that you come, but educate and enable people, don't just sell. You might also be saying to me, but 30 minutes is a long time to put together content, and that's fine. There are loads of other types of ways you can get involved in conferences and sessions. I'm not going to go through all the different types of session styles there are because there are loads, but there's 3 I think that get looked over sometimes that I just want to kind of share. So if you ever see in an agenda a BOF, a birds of a feather session, I love these. They're really fun. They are an hour long, but you don't have to talk for an hour. You also don't have to submit for this. So if you see a BOF on a conference agenda, usually it's a one human who leads the discussion and the whole audience gets involved. They're also called park benches, round tables, things like that. But you can go and you can flex your muscles on speaking out loud in front of people, asking and answering questions, and you can start to figure out if being involved in conferences is something you want to do without having to submit the CFP or write the talk or put together the slides. So a great way to get involved. The other thing is, if it's I'm not an expert, what if other people know more than me, submit a panel. You saw some amazing speakers over the last 2 days. Reach out to those humans and say, hey, can I share a stage with you? I'd love to ask you questions. Therefore, you don't need to be the expert. You bring people together that you want to hear from. Chances are the rest of the audience wants to too. And it's a nice way, again, of getting involved. But ask those questions you actually want to know. Sometimes panels can be a little boring because everyone asks surface level things. Think of like the nitty-gritty questions you'd like to ask. You can prep the panel before, that's fine, but it's a nice way to get involved. And if you do want to talk, but the length is a problem, look for quickies or lightnings or ignites. They have all different types of names, bite-sized sessions. They're quick. So one, if you're scared of standing on stage, it's over in 5 to 15 minutes. Or two, you might have something really cool to share, but you're like, I can explain it in 5 minutes. And that's a great way, because people also like short and succinct content. So look out for different types of session styles. You don't have to submit a 40-minute conference talk. The final thing I'll say is never give up. If you ask any CFP committee, they get way more submissions than they have speaking slots. So just because you got rejected from a conference doesn't mean your talk was terrible, you should never do it again, just don't even bother. There's a number of reasons why they might have said no. It might be that a lot of similar content was submitted and someone else just got that speaking slot. It might be that you left out the what's in it for me. So ask for feedback. Not all CFP committees will give you feedback, but if you say, hey, I'm a new speaker, any tips on how I can make this abstract better, anything I was missing, chances are at least 50% of the time the CFP committee will come back to you. So please, please, please never give up and keep on trying. Go to those meetups, talk to humans. The other thing though, if we move away from conferencing, is if you do get accepted, you do write the abstract, the title, the everything, you spend all this time and it's a lot of hard work, and then we give the talk to the 5, 10, 100, 500 people, and then we stop. And you've done all that effort. So why not take that content and help other people learn? Some humans also don't like coming to conferences. They learn by reading, so they read blogs. They learn by listening, so they listen to podcasts. So how do we take that content that we've created and make it work a little bit harder for us? I actually call this content recycling. It's my favorite thing to do. Why work hard when you can work smart? You've done all the work already. When I give conference sessions, so I'm dyslexic, and when someone says blogging, I have a panic attack. I have a panic attack when writing a tweet. English might be your second language, and that might be where you get a bit nervous. But like there are services and friends out there that can check your spelling and your grammar. There's Fiverr, there's Grammarly, there's things like that. When I write a talk, I actually write it out before I create the slides. That can be the basis for my blog post. If you do a lot of research online and you see some cool humans answering questions, reach out to them and see if they'll be the guest on your podcast. If you like to blog, maybe that's the basis for your next talk. So understand how you can take some content that you've created, you've learned, and make it into multimedia for other humans to utilize. It's also then easier to translate for people who aren't English as a first language. But all of this is just to remember to recycle. You do the work already. You research things already. You solve problems in your day job already. So utilize that content and share it with the world. The more people who know your name, the higher we can grow our careers. If we look at the community as well, again, on that front of we're online all the time, we're asking and answering questions, and sometimes when we're trying to solve a problem, we see other people asking the same questions. I think we heard in one of the talks earlier today. And eventually we solve the problem. And then we go on our merry little way and we leave all those lovely humans on the internet to fend for themselves. So why not go back on and answer those questions? It's another great way to build your profile within the community. If you're worried, oh, but Sam, I actually didn't solve it myself. I read, John or Mary's blog and they helped me, credit them. But sometimes the way in which you explain something that's a bit different might be the thing the human needs to understand the solution. So it's okay to rephrase other people's work, but credit them for their work and go on and help the world. Also, at conferences, at community events, at meetups, are the humans creating the content? So technology is forever changing. There's books being published all the time. And the people that are writing those books, speaking at conferences, doing the things, are sitting right next to you. So always look, forward. Yes, we have some great speakers here today, But you're a very intelligent person, chances are the person sitting next to you is also a very intelligent person. So grow your community with the humans sitting next to you as well, and help each other. I'm not going to touch too much on getting involved in open source because we've heard a bit about it today, and I'd like to say I'm not an expert. But the one thing I do want to say is there's lots of ways to get involved. A lot of the time we think about it, and we want to improve the software that we rely on every day, but how do we do it? And the first thing I'd like to say is what it means to contribute does not mean you have to contribute code. You can if you want to, but there's loads of other ways, and I'm sure if you ask any open source maintainer, they'd probably say that out of the list of things they need help with, code's probably not the highest on their agenda. Sometimes it is, but other ways you can get involved are through, if you enjoy, so I enjoy planning events, right? I can put together a meetup or a community event where people get together and help each other on the problem. I like to write documentation, Dan spoke about earlier, get involved in helping with that documentation. I like to organize. Well, a lot of times we get very similar tickets being submitted, bugs, things like that. How about you consolidate that and make it a good process? If you do like to code, by all means, please do it. If you like to help others, you can make workshops, you can run training, you can write blog posts on how to utilize those projects. So know that there are loads of ways you can get involved that aren't just about submitting, but you can submit if you'd like to. If you're looking for an open source project to contribute to, the first thing I'd say is start at home. So what are the things you're working on at the moment? You utilize a package, it's got a problem, you fix the bug, you patch it locally, and then you move on. Again, submitting that back to the maintainers will help other humans utilizing those projects to not come to the same roadblocks you had. So the moral of all of this is you do all of this stuff in your day job already, just sharing it with the community, whether it's at conferences, on open source projects, writing blogs, doing different things, you're doing it, just share it with multiple people. I like to think, and I think I stole this from someone, but open source is just a fancy term for treating the world's problems as solvable. So let's solve them together. The last thing I want to touch on is, other than the recycling thing, is how to find a job with community. So how many humans in the room here are hiring managers? How many of you, if you never had to look at a CV again but hire amazing people, you would do that? So we're all bad at writing CVs. We're even worse at writing job descriptions. The interview process is a nightmare, and all we want to do is do fun things. Also, the humans next to you might be moving on from roles, not because they work for the worst companies in the world, but just because they want to move on. So talking to each other is a great way to find work. It's also a good way to find out what it's like to work at a company. You go on an interview process and they sell you the dream, like rose-tinted glasses, and then you start your first day and you're like, this is not what they told me. Well, if you take someone for a beer after a meetup, they'll very quickly tell you what it's really like to work there. But also remember what's valuable for you. So I might go on a huge rant about why I think Sneak is the most amazing company to work for. But if you listen to what I'm saying, you might think that might be fine for Sam, but that would be my worst nightmare. And vice versa. I might go on a huge rant about my last organization, but you're listening and you're going, actually, that sounds like a problem I'd love to solve. So when people do share their experiences where they're working, just listen to it with what actually matters to you and not their tone of on a rant or this is the best thing in the world, because you're all individual. Also remember that lots of companies do like referral bonuses for their team because recruitment agents are really, really expensive. So by talking to each other, you're actually making each other money. So that's the only, motivation you get. I love a referral bonus. So talk to each other, not just the humans on stage. Most people are looking to hire, or they've got a cool project that you can start talking about, that when you are ready to move, you're not then going, oh, I really want a new job. Why won't someone hire me? You've gone, I've had all these great conversations with these different teams that are doing cool things. Let me see if I can go join them and start working on it. Then it becomes a conversation of just switching roles, as opposed to now I've got to go and brush up my CV and go through a horrible interview process and try and meet these new people. You've met them already. But yeah, that circles back to a lot of the time, the people who make decisions about your career don't see your code, but they should be seeing and hearing your name, whether it's online, on the stage, on a podcast. Talk to each other. Thank you so much. I'm Sam. Thanks for listening.